Hello everyone, I am back, and today I'll be talking about the top 10 best Monstercat songs of 2023. I've said before that 2023 was a year for Monstercat, but it's not like there wasn't some great stuff from time to time. I'll even go one step further and say there were months that actually had a lot of solid songs. June was a fantastic month in general, where I got invested in what was releasing on Uncaged. November was memorable because Instinct had a huge resurgence and finally got out of the house spam that plagued its year, with not only big names coming back, but also producing some great tunes to boot. So while there wasn't a whole lot in terms of this year, the best did make up for it at times. So let's begin this list. Same rules apply as last time. No remixes or VIPs, and only 1 to 2 artists per song. So without any further ado, let's start with our honorable mentions in no specific order. Man, I have missed songs like these, songs that embrace more of an upbeat, charming vibe to them. Nanobi did this years ago with Rainbow Road, an absolute classic, and starting off 2023, he does it again. The chiptune twinkles that open up the song, the drop of the infectious lead, a low-end kick that layers up the clap, making the percussion have some much-needed impact. Even the pitch of vocals have some charm to them. Think Sprite from Amphibia if he had auto-tune, and yes, I did listen to this at the time I was watching that show. Even if your only starts tonight, you made a great impression. There were so many songs off of Fool's amazing LP machine that could have made this list. The greatest self-titled track, Motor, Mothership, and The Law were so close to making this list, but ultimately, this was my favorite from the LP, which has full return to the genre of chillwave, and it's utilized really nicely here, with the sawwave pads, the beefy snare luring you into the calm presence it's trying to go for, and just like with the rest of the album, it proves that Fool is not only getting better, but that he's also willing to switch things up and execute it well. My heart breaks from the way you look at me. Who else saw this coming? A song with Exogen on this list, especially given my own history with him? But that's because Fall Apart is a great dubstep song, and one I wish he made more of, even if he did get some help from Sullivan King. The hook is absolutely strong, with Sullivan King's vocals playing nicely with a metallic synth design and screechy synth that complements it, and it contains one of Exogen's best drops in a while. Between the melodic interplay of the synth growls and some solid percussion, it gives you the feeling that this was much more thought out than the rest of his stuff, and that BPM switch up was a nice addition. It's not higher on this list because unfortunately after this, Exogen would continue to produce really bad material and somehow find new ways to do so, where he even fumbled Subtronics, Kaiwachi, and Atling collabs respectively. But in that moment, it made me reconsider Exogen as an artist, and that I was a little too harsh on him. And even if he doesn't make any more songs like this is still a good track. I'll take it. The fact the new singles off of Higher Ground Part 2 went nowhere is infuriating. You Want It, while it was playing in Cohen's comfort zone, was still fairly good, and 14th Canon was a terrific tune. It had Cohen do something differently and paid off wonderfully. And then there's this, the self-titled track and the best off of both Part 1 and Part 2. The interplay between Katie and Kairos is great, and the production is just as good, between the pianos and chisel guitars that keep the song minimalist, which builds up into one of the best drops Coben has done. With the proficient piano keys, playing an incredible melody, it gives you the feeling of hopefulness that you've truly gone beyond that higher ground. It's a shame that this couldn't make the list proper, but this deserves a lot more attention. Out of all the things I could have predicted this year, I did not think I would be expecting Blank to release a song on this label, yet it happened, and as a result, it became one of the saving graces of Instinct this year. Now, while I prefer another song to his much later on this list, Talk to You is a sort of emotional roller coaster that hits a lot harder than you expected it to. I'm not just talking about the production here, with the gentle piano keys, the lush synth pads, and the fills, which gives some songs some identity to it, but also lyrically. which is surprising because on the outside there's not a whole lot going on here, as the verses are very short and there's lack of detail. But just the lines, "Yeah, I know should go drive my eyes," or "I'll tell you all about my days, even if there's nothing to say," it shows more focus than what I'm used to, even if that's not a high bar to reach. And while it's not his best work on this label, we'll get to it, it's still a solid tune that I feel should at least get a mention. Good stuff.
I can feel them taking over.
Like with Colvin, Grabbits' EP should have been a lot more popular than it was. At the same time, the best track did become the biggest hit, and for good reason. Grabbits gave this stellar performance, taking some nods from 21 Pilots of all people, and highlighting their best traits. The hooks are infectious, and the rap verse was a nice way to build up into that second drop. Speaking of which, the drops. The first drop has enough grit to it between the vocal fill, the noisy bass line, and the bass heavy percussion that it actually makes you want to dance. And the second drop completely solidifies this song on this list, with a sharp distorted synth that cuts into the track at the best time, fully utilizing the already great elements left over. And what do you have this song that's an absolute monster and definitely worthy of the best of 2023. So Cloud9 has had quite the journey outside of Monstercat. He released his debut album, Almost Weightless, which saw him experiment with his style and push the boundaries of the Cloud9 project, especially when the From Here VIP gave him the option to do that. Which brings us back to this, a collaboration from Skybreak, who also had a tremendous year, we'll talk about him much later, making a heavy garage tune that's extremely satisfying to hear, combining the oscillating synth growls and tweeting lead on the second drop to create a completely different experience for both artists, which in itself feels very free. No pun intended. This was so close to making my list proper, but as much as I love this track, the vocal chops unfortunately bring this down. They just feel like they don't belong, not to mention sputter out of key multiple times, creating this awkward feeling. Kai's vocals are great, having the bravado to carry a song like this. Of course, I would say that, but this production does not need any carrying and actually complements the vocals. Between the dynamic pianos, twinkling synth keys, to the drop which showcases Just Gent's creative side. According to Just Gent, this took 10 years to make, and it shows in the final result. While it's not my favorite work, it's still a great return and a great song. But let's start this list proper, starting with number 10. So Stonebank had a really rough year, if I'm being blunt. A lot of his catalog on this label felt like he was desperate to push anything to the label. He started the year with a mediocre deep house tune, Back to Life, and then a standard future rave single, Diving In, and his collab with the Pegboard Nerds, while it grew on me, it still felt more like a demo than a complete song. So when I heard this song, not only was it the return to form that was nice, but it was also the song's quality that was refreshing to hear. It sounds like this song is ready for its rescue. Coming from Stonebank, this is nothing special, but even with that, Rescue Me just works. The build-up is intense with the twinkles of synth, the buzzy synth lead providing some much needed tension, that bass line having enough low end in the verses. Then we get to the drop, which has a low growl cutting through that has a lot of impact, and the synth leads carrying some weight behind it. This is what an electro house tune should be, especially for Stonebank standards. It puts you in that mood of danger that it's trying to convey with its lyrics. The reason it's not higher is because for some reason, Email sounds like she has autotune on, and it drags down this song. Still, it's a good return to form from Stonebank, and I'm happy he made a comeback. Number 9. So my video on Monstercat Instinct went a tad viral, and also sparked some interesting discussions surrounding the sublabel. The vast majority of people agree with me and shared some of their experience with Monstercat, and hey, thanks for the support. But there is one comment that caught my attention, and it was from TVR, also known as Zoro, a widely known Monstercat ranker and artist. And to quote him, "I think those few releases every now and then for Instinct really make up for the overabundance of house on Instinct. And with November rolling around, completely blowing my expectations, that was proven to be true. With single after single, proving that Instinct can completely blow away a week of Uncaged releases." Wanna know what one of those songs were? find it funny how we got 2 songs this year called Fever, and both were on Instinct. But between this and the decent Lewis, Thompson, and Punctual collab, I'll still take this any day of the week. And it really comes down to the musicality, which What's So Not and Dactyl are masters at. That tropical instrument in the beginning and end of the song, the buzzing synths that open up Dactyl on the vocals that have enough energy behind it, and then there's a drop, and while I could see people not liking that lead, for me it's really infectious and the squawking design has some charm to it. Plus it combines well with the minimalist bass line and the gentle drum and bass percussion, and the off drops seal the deal, with that bright guitar line and the percussion switching up to something more acoustic sounding. It's a sound that occupied Instinct during its glory days in 2018, and man, I have missed those times. It's also reminding me of Bitbird, which isn't a coincidence since What's So Not has worked with Son Hollow multiple times, and Dactyl ended up getting a song on that label. I really hope Dactyl could stick around. Every time he has, I have enjoyed it, and even if this is one off from What's So Not, it's a great track from him. Number 8. And while we're on the topic of quality releases on Instinct, let me get this out of the way. This is not as good as Dead Man Walking from last year, primarily because Dead Man Walking took a risk with the darker tone and ended up succeeding. This, on the other hand, plays into a lot of Grant's tropes. But if there's anything we need in 2023, it's exactly that, and Grant absolutely delivers. There's just so much going on with the song and the production that you could get lost in the groove of it. That bass line works amazingly on the verses, and the whole disco feel to the track. It would work well as an unapologetic pop song that knows it's cheesy but learns to have fun with it anyway. But then there's the drop, which elevates this further, with Grant's style poking its head out with that liquid synth design and amazing vocal chops. And Will J absolutely owning the song, sounding like The Weeknd crossed over with Nick Jonas, while maintaining that fun aspect of the song. It's an absolute earworm of a tune that finally got Grant out of that rough stage of his career back in 2021. And given the fact that he's gone to write songs for Noted and working with Ryden Tedder as a co-producer for Tate McRae's Greedy, looks like Grant is going places. And I'm totally on board with that. Number 7. I'll admit, this pick is the most biased out of this list, mostly because as soon as I heard his music, I was immediately hooked. With the exception of one single he released this year, he actually made some great dubstep hits with sound design and texture that's memorable. The artist I'm talking about, of course, is Boss Fight, and this year was probably his biggest year. Not only because he was consistent, but he also collaborated with big names like Company, Dirty Phonics, and the Pegboard Nerds, the last of which also had a great year, bringing forth some of their best tracks from all the artists in question. Oh yeah, and he released this. I've been waiting a while for this song to be released, and while it took some time for me to get used to the new restrained feel of the track instead of the explosive powerhouse of the teaser, Buckshots is still a great track, keeping things interesting while leaning into a lot of his strengths, with great bass design, a loud and provocative nature to the song that doesn't cross the line of obnoxious like a lot of dubstep songs do, but it's that dystopian Space Laces-esque lead that makes this track stand out. And while it's definitely got its influence, just like I have mine, the song has Boss Fight's style to it, so it stands out as more than just a Space Laces ripoff. That's emblematic of the second drop, with those vocal chops and meaty bass line. And just like with Grant, since Boss Fight is now remixing songs from Nightmare and getting pushed from Excision, he's also going places. And honestly, after hearing this, along with Decimate, I'm also on board with it. Number 6. It's honestly shocking how much Instinct ended up on this list, especially when you consider this next song barely even fits on the sublabel's style. What reminds me most is last year's Out of the Dark by No Mana, an uncaged song that got a push to Instinct for some reason, but the song is so good that you don't even care. In fact, you might even welcome it, especially since Instinct this year has its slow pivot into mediocrity. But what I'm trying to say here is that despite the strange marketing choice, we still got a great song out of it. Back Computer had an alright year on this label. Besides this, he released 2 other songs, Land of the Living, which is really standard, and his cover of Electric. While it wasn't terrible, the short runtime seriously knocked that song back. But Calling Us immediately resonated with me, and it's not hard to see why. The airy cinematic opening with Jordan Grace's vocal delivery, the build-up that's a gradual transition from the intro to the drops and adds some necessary tension. And while the first drop is standard Becky Peter with the synths and the crisp clap, the second drop is where the song truly truly shines. Starting with a fake out before hitting the viewer with a heavy techno drop that goes hard. And unlike the melodic heavy dubstep before it, is not completely out of nowhere, as there's melodic interplay as it transitions out and into the standard drop. This is how you actually do a heavy drop in a melodic song. You create it based around the existing track. And that drop is why it's in this position, because without it, this would be just an honorable mention. But given Bad Computer's consistency, I can't wait to see what he has in store for 2024. Number 5.
Let's talk about making something different. Usually, I'm completely open to an artist who usually sticks to 1 or 2 genres, who branches out and makes something people aren't used to hearing.
Hey, I remember that clip. Now let's talk about a positive example of this, shall we? I'm so happy that Slippy has found his new style after the painfully mediocre Everything Means Nothing at All. Last year he released Existentia, which took his much more dynamic color-based style. He continued this with Be Alright, which featured an uncredited Grant that almost made this list, and Tell Me Why was the expected but fun as it could get Brenham track. But the highlight of the year was this track. The collaboration with Darby that blew me away the first time I heard it. While the Czech vocal sample does get tiring, the rest of the track is some of the best minimalist sound design I have heard this year, with those low synth growls and the trap knock providing some really solid atmosphere to dance to. I also love the house fake out and the second drop where Just Like Calling Us provided something unexpected but ends up working out amazingly. And to think Slippy was one of the artists I was worried about back in 2021. Funny how much that's turned around. Number 4. These next two are fairly obvious pickings, but this first one is very specific to me. I remember praising this song a lot, and I even made some community tabs joking about how this song will be the best of the year. And while it didn't reach that spot, it still deserves to be very high on my lists. So for those of you who've been watching for this year, you probably know what that song is. I'll admit, when I first heard this collaboration, I was a little scared. Blank is best known for his mid-tempo, and while it wasn't anything too crazy, it doesn't match at all with Hello World's style, who made this list last year with Too Hard to Let Go. Then I heard this song called The Wild, and knew right then and there, this was making the list. Between the synth humps, the guitar licks, and the verses, it starts off the song slow before gradually building up the production. Luma has worked with Blank before, and it works just as well back then as it does now. And I don't know how JT Roach silences or around him where almost every single song of these instantly becomes great, but his vocal performance is good as always from him, and the duet on the chorus is reflective of both sides of a relationship. But let's be honest, the reason why it's here is for those two drops, with Blank's melodic mid-tempo drop offering a earworm of a lead and a sharper clap. During the build-up there's a vocal hum that gets cut off, which is where Hello World comes in with his halftime drop to fill in that missing vocal chop. Once again, doing something unexpected and yet working so amazingly well. So if this is only a number 4, what could be better? Number 3. I mean, come on. There's no way this wasn't making the list. If there was any unanimous agreement with the community this year, is that this song deserves to be the top song on Monstercat. So much so I didn't even vote for this track because I knew that it would take the top spot with ease, and well, I was proven right. I mean, I could go for the obvious answer. It sounds like a lot of time, effort, and talent was put into this track. For one, can we appreciate the excellent branding of this song? Because you could definitely tell this song was inspired by Mario Kart. Between those synth jingles and the alternate melodies, it feels like it belongs in the game. And that synth solo towards the middle of the drop, well, it's the sort of thing that doesn't happen a whole lot anymore, but when it does, it keeps you engaged throughout. And of course, the drops are fantastic. Starting off with Temanite's drop and that huge staccato lead works well, and if it was just that drop, it would be amazing as it is. But then Skybreak shows up and steals the show with his card-based drop at the very end of the song, with that gurgling synth growl, dynamic percussion, and a nicely transitioned piano break. For Temanite, it's yet another hit from him, proving that why he should absolutely show up more on the label, and for Skybreak, it's one of the best songs he's done, and shows he's got a lot to show in the years ahead. So yeah, check this out. Number 2, Just like I mentioned before, November was easily the best month for Instinct. Monstercat finally started to get the memo and started featuring not only different genres, but also huge returns with amazing music of their own. Now granted, I doubt this is going to last all the way throughout 2024, we could hope, but hey, given how much Instinct out of November made this list, I'll take that any day of the week. I've already mentioned Just a Gent and Dactyl on this list already, but if you want an artist that blew everyone away, plus made an amazing track that revamps his project but where his unique identity remains, look no further than the return of Haywire. The fact this even happened amazes me, that one of the most respected Monstercat artists would come back, especially when we were all convinced that the older Monstercat artists were moving on to better things. But it's not just this return that was huge. It's also the fact that White Lie is also a really good song on its own. Now, yes, this does take a lot of notes from Grant's style, between the guitar pickups, the percussion, but I don't really care for two reasons. One, I like the style anyway, and two, Haywire is able to bring his own flair to the song and works wonders here. Not to mention having that moodier, much darker vibe that made Dead Man Walking a treat last year. It also matches with the rather questionable nature of Keeping a Lie, which is what the song is all about. It drops out the 2018 future bass style that I adore, with that fluttering bass line, a vocal chop that blends nicely with the melody, and Haywire's iconic synth melody working beautifully. And that synth buildup is genius, leading towards that second drop. In other words, this is what happens when it accelerates creativity, crosses over into Instinct. And the reason why it's higher is because it was so out of left field for Instinct in 2023, but it was in the best way possible. So, what could possibly top that? Number 1. So you may have noticed a certain song that's missing from this list, the AU5 and Prismatic collaboration known as Quantum Level. It was originally going to be at number 7 on this list, and all throughout the year, I stood firm on that stance, until the Best of 2023 album was released and I heard this song again. And after listening all the way through, I think it deserves this spot, and it's a shame I had to come to that conclusion last minute. And while I still like Quantum Level, this is a song that has much better ideas and construction. And for me, I didn't know what I was waiting on the other side. This song is really all I need to convince you that AU5 and Chime were amazing this year, and really just in general. I can mention the monstrous synth at the beginning from AU5 and how that reflects the best of his discography, being epic and adventurous while maintaining that otherworldly presence, which is what made Bridges Between so good. I could mention the year Chime had with his album Aetherborn and how he expanded his coin color-based style, and how that reflects in that second drop with that airy atmosphere and solid progression. I could mention how AU5 and Chime are basically made for each other at this point because of their abilities to break their respective boundaries. I also could mention the drops are fantastic, as AU5's glitchy synths work well with the bubbly sound design of Chime's work, but really what puts this above the rest is this atmosphere. The one minor complaint about Accelerate was that it was a tad flat, with a lot of the sounds converging towards the middle, not a whole lot going to the left or the right. This on the other hand feels full, with sounds going every which way. It crafts a world that you are sucked into until the song stops, and believe me, that is a hard feat to accomplish. While Voidwalkers took some time to grow on me, this immediately clicked. It's a track that shows what happens when two legendary producers with years of experience are in a room together. You get this. That's why The Other Side by AU5 and Chime is the best Monstercat song of 2023. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. This one's on the back burner for quite some time, so I apologize if this has been taking so long. What are your favorite songs on Monstercat this year? Whatever it is, leave a comment down below. Also, check out my main channel if you're interested in film discussion. I've been procrastinating a lot and I need to get back to there, so I promise I will get more content on the main channel soon. Also, make sure to stick around because I will be covering other years of Monstercat. But until then, thanks for watching, and I will see you all soon.